Hidden Power: Mastering Dark Psychology to Control Mind and Behavior. Copyright 2024 NLP Radio Inc. Introduction. Have you ever thought about the dark and hidden world of human psychology? Are you surprised by the mysterious and enigmatic behavior around you? Now is the time to delve deeper into these mysteries and learn about the dark techniques of psychology that affect our lives every day. The book, 10 Techniques in Dark Psychology, invites you to a wonderful and exciting journey into the heart of the dark world of psychology. This book not only opens the hidden doors of human behavior to you, but also gives you a powerful tool to identify these techniques and deal with them. Imagine being surrounded in a world full of mind games and complex behaviors. Each chapter of this book will help you peel back the hidden veils and learn techniques of manipulation, deception, and power games. By reading this book, you will be able to recognize if people around you are using dark psychology techniques or not. Learn how you can deal with these techniques and avoid their negative effects. Increase your awareness of complex and traumatic behaviors in human relationships. If you are ready to enter the hidden and complex world of human behavior and learn about the dark techniques that may be present in your life, this book can be the roadmap for you. 10 Techniques in Dark Psychology is a practical and in-depth guide that will lead you to a better understanding of yourself and others. Do you dare to face hidden and dark realities and find the strength to understand and deal with them? This book can be the beginning of fundamental changes in your life. Don't miss the opportunity and get ready to discover hidden secrets that may surprise you. Now, follow us page by page and discover the dark world of psychology. Chapter 1. Introduction to Dark Psychology. In the complex and mysterious world of human behavior, there are some aspects and techniques that are deliberately hidden behind dark curtains. Dark psychology is the science that studies these hidden aspects and harmful behaviors. In this chapter, we will explore the basics of dark psychology and examine the importance of understanding this field. What is dark psychology? Dark psychology studies the behaviors and mental mechanisms that lie behind the invisible curtains of human life. This field of psychology is devoted to the analysis and investigation of negative and hurtful behaviors, such as deception, manipulation, and power games. Unlike positive psychology, which examines constructive and improving aspects of personality, dark psychology focuses on discovering and analyzing negative and harmful behaviors. Differences between dark psychology and positive psychology. Positive psychology focuses on improving the quality of life and increasing individual satisfaction and happiness. This branch of psychology strives to help people identify and exploit their potential. In contrast, dark psychology examines harmful behaviors and techniques that may unconsciously or intentionally affect others. While positive psychology seeks to make positive changes in a person's life, dark psychology seeks to identify and manage behaviors that can harm human relationships. These differences help us to better understand the nature of human behavior and how it interacts with the surrounding environment. The importance of studying dark psychology. Studying dark psychology allows us to learn about negative and hurtful behaviors and find ways to deal with them. In today's world, where human communication is increasingly complex, understanding the dark techniques of psychology can help us to 1. Identify whether we are exposed to harmful behaviors. 2. Learn how to deal with these behaviors and avoid their harm. 3. Improve our relationships with others and create healthier and more positive relationships. In this chapter, we were introduced to the basics of dark psychology and explored its importance in everyday life. In the following chapters, we will explore specific techniques used in dark psychology and how to identify and counter them. Stay with us to penetrate deep into these techniques and discover their hidden secrets. Get ready to embark on an exciting and educational journey into the dark world of psychology. Chapter 2. First technique, manipulation. In the complex world of human relations, one of the dark psychology techniques that is widely used is the manipulation technique. This technique indirectly and cleverly deals with changing the behavior or attitude of others without being expressed directly. In this chapter, we will take a deep look at this technique and ways to identify and deal with it. Definition and explanation of manipulation technique. Manipulation is the use of psychological techniques to change the behavior, feelings, or decisions of others in such a way that the manipulator achieves his or her goal. This technique can appear in different forms, including deception, psychological pressure, or power games. A manipulative person may try to achieve their goals by using false information, creating guilt, or altering reality. Examples of manipulative techniques in everyday life. In everyday life, manipulative techniques can be seen in a variety of ways. Some examples are deceit through false information, a person who tries to change the opinion or decisions of others by providing false or incomplete information. For example, a salesperson who introduces unrealistic product features to customers in order to persuade them to buy. Creating guilt, a person who exploits the guilt of others to achieve his goals. For example, a person may make their friends comply with their requests by making them feel guilty. Hiding facts, a person who refuses to provide complete or true information about an issue in order to force others to make a wrong decision. Like when a manager hides information about the real performance of his team to show himself in a better position. Ways to identify and deal with manipulation. Identifying and countering manipulative techniques can be challenging, but with the right awareness and strategies, these techniques can be well avoided. Some effective ways to identify and deal with manipulation are 1. Attention to detail. Attention to detail and careful review of the information provided can help identify manipulation. If the information you are given seems incomplete or questionable, question it and investigate its accuracy. 2. Awareness of emotions. If you notice that your emotions have changed abnormally, you may be under the influence of manipulation techniques. A rational examination of your situation and feelings can help you come to grips with reality. 3. Questioning and seeking clarity. By asking clear and precise questions, you can avoid existing ambiguities. Asking for more information and full explanations can help you avoid manipulation. 4. Strengthening self-confidence. By strengthening your self-confidence and logical judgment, you can better analyze and make decisions and avoid the negative effects of manipulation. Conclusion. Manipulation technique is one of the powerful tools in dark psychology that indirectly influence the behavior and decisions of others. By knowing this technique and using appropriate coping strategies, you can prevent its possible damage and have healthier and better relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark techniques of psychology and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. A true story of manipulation technique. To better understand the manipulation technique, let's look at a true story. In this story, Nina, a young and energetic employee in a big company, meets her boss, Mr. Sammy. Mr. Sammy constantly asks Nina to work extra hours and take on projects outside of her duties. At first, he treats Nina with respect and affection, but gradually begins to use manipulative techniques to force Nina to accept these requests. Mr. Sammy tells Nina that if you don't do this, the project may be delayed and this will cause problems for the whole team. He also indirectly blames Nina, saying that the rest of the team work harder than you and you should work harder. Here, using manipulative techniques, Mr. Sammy creates guilt and heavy responsibility in Nina. In this way, he achieves his goal without directly asking Nina to work extra hours. Nina, unaware of these techniques, gradually falls for the manipulation and increases her working hours indefinitely. Analysis of the technique of manipulation in the story. In this story, several manipulative techniques can be clearly identified. Creating guilt and psychological pressure. Mr. Sammy puts a lot of psychological pressure on Nina by saying that the project will be delayed and cause problems for the whole team. This pressure makes Nina feel guilty and forced to accept the requests. Indirect comparison and blame. By comparing Nina with other team members and saying that they work harder, Mr. Sammy indirectly blames Nina and lowers her self-confidence. This method indirectly affects Nina and leads her to fulfill the requests. Hiding information. Mr. Sammy does not give Nina full information about the real status of the project and uses this lack of transparency to put pressure on her. This concealment does not allow Nina to fully analyze the situation and make better decisions. Key tips to avoid manipulation. To avoid the negative effects of manipulation techniques, it can be helpful to keep the following points in mind. 1. Awareness and training. Being aware of different manipulation techniques and learning the skills to recognize them can help you be less affected by these techniques. 2. Establishing clear boundaries. Defining and maintaining clear boundaries in work and personal relationships can help prevent manipulation. You should not allow others to pressure you without consent and full knowledge. 3. Strengthening the ability to make independent decisions. By strengthening your ability to analyze logically and make independent decisions, you can avoid the effects of manipulation and achieve better results. 4. Counseling and support. When you feel that you are being influenced by manipulative techniques, counseling with trusted people and getting support can help you manage the situation better. Conclusion. Manipulation technique, as one of the main tools in dark psychology, can deliberately and subtly influence the behavior and decisions of others. By identifying and understanding this technique, you can easily avoid its negative effects and create healthier and more efficient relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 3. Second technique, gaslighting. One of the complex and harmful techniques in dark psychology that can have deep and damaging effects on people's psyche is the gaslighting technique. This technique is specifically used to target a person's reality and instill doubt in their mind. In this chapter, we will examine this technique, its detection methods, and ways to deal with it. The concept of gaslighting and its history. The term gaslighting is derived from a famous play called Gaslighting, in which a husband gradually convinces his wife that she has gone mad. He does this by gradually changing the details of the woman's surroundings and then denying these changes, so that she gradually begins to doubt her own sanity. Gaslighting means deliberately and systematically creating doubt in a person's mind. The person using this technique constantly alters reality and makes the victim believe that they are mistaken, delusional, or even going crazy. This technique can be used especially in close relationships, work, and family environments. Gaslighting identification methods. Gaslighting can be challenging to identify, as the technique is often carried out gradually and subtly. However, some signs and detection techniques include gradual and minor changes. A person who is constantly changing the details of the surrounding environment, such as changes in behavior, speech, or small events, which may not be clearly discernible at first, but gradually lead to a feeling of doubt. Denial of facts and information. When a person consistently uses denial of facts and information that has already been presented, this can be a sign of gaslighting. For example, someone may keep saying that you remember something wrong or that you have incorrect information. Changes in emotions and self-confidence. Gaslighting victims may gradually experience feelings of guilt, anxiety, and decreased self-confidence. He may feel that he has lost his mind due to the uncertainty of reality. Irregular and inconsistent answers. A person who uses the gaslighting technique may give you inconsistent and irregular answers that cause confusion and doubt in you. Techniques for dealing with gaslighting. Dealing with gaslighting requires awareness, strength, and specific strategies. Some effective techniques to deal with this technique are: 1. Recording and documenting the facts. Keeping notes, messages, and documentation related to the facts and events can help you to correctly understand the facts and use them to prove your facts if needed. 2. Maintain communication with trusted sources. Talking to friends, family, and trusted sources about your experiences and feelings can help you avoid the effects of gaslighting and get honest, unbiased feedback. 3. Preventing self-blame. Remember that you are not responsible for changes and irrational behavior. Recognizing that gaslighting is being used to influence you and building self-awareness can help you get out of it. 4. Seeking professional counseling. When you feel that you have been affected by gaslighting and cannot deal with it on your own, consulting with a professional psychologist can help you gain a better understanding of the situation and ways to deal with it. Conclusion. Gaslighting technique, as one of the most complex and traumatic techniques of dark psychology, can have deep and harmful effects on a person's psyche. By knowing the signs of this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can prevent its negative effects and maintain your mental health. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 4. The third technique, power games. One of the key techniques in dark psychology that can have a huge impact on relationships and work environments is the technique of power games. This technique is used to control and dominate others, and it can show itself in different ways, including creating inequality, using pressure and threats, and manipulative tactics. In this chapter, we will explore power plays, how to spot them, and ways to counter this technique. The concept of power games. Power games refer to a set of techniques and strategies designed to dominate others and control their behaviors, emotions, and decisions. These games usually involve the use of pressure, threats, deception, and other indirect methods to achieve their goals. Power games can be used in different environments, including personal, family, and work relationships. All kinds of power games. Power plays can come in many forms. Some of the most common include pressure and threats. A person who uses power games techniques may force another person to do things that they would not otherwise do by threatening negative consequences or putting psychological pressure on another person. For example, a manager can tell an employee that if you don't deliver this project on time, your job position will be in jeopardy. Creating inequality. In some cases, a person who uses power games techniques may seek to dominate others by creating inequality and unfair differences in conditions and opportunities. For example, a colleague may somehow put you at a disadvantage by giving you false or incomplete information. Deception and manipulation. This technique includes the use of deception and manipulative tactics in order to control and change the behavior of others. A person using this technique may achieve their goal by providing false information, creating doubt and confusion, or using emotional manipulation. Methods of identifying power games. Identifying power games can be difficult, but by looking at some signs and patterns of behavior, you can identify them. Feeling pressured or threatened. If you notice that someone is constantly pressuring you or threatening you, you may be experiencing power games. This pressure and threat can take many forms, including frequent criticism, threats of negative consequences, or pressure to do things in a certain way. Inequality and discrimination. Seeing inequality in your treatment, receiving incomplete or incorrect information, and unfair differences in opportunities can be signs of power games. These inequalities are designed to control and dominate you. Deception and confusion. If you feel constantly deceived or confused, you may be under the influence of manipulative techniques. These deceptions can include false information, changing facts, and creating doubts about one's abilities. Ways to deal with power games. Dealing with power games requires awareness, appropriate strategies, and the ability to resist psychological pressure. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include 1. Strengthening self-awareness and self-confidence. By strengthening your self-awareness and self-confidence, you can better analyze situations and avoid the effects of power games. Knowing your values and principles will help you resist pressures and threats. 2. Establishing clear boundaries. By setting and maintaining clear boundaries in relationships and work environments, you can avoid the negative effects of power games. You should not allow others to pressure you without full consent and knowledge. 3. Identifying and analyzing behaviors. By carefully analyzing the behaviors of others and identifying patterns of power games, you can easily become aware of their techniques and prevent their negative effects. 4. Talk and counseling. When you feel affected by power games, talking to trusted people and consulting with professionals can help you gain a better understanding of the situation and ways to deal with it. Conclusion. Power games, as one of the complex techniques of dark psychology, can have deep and negative effects on relationships and work environments. By recognizing this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can avoid the negative effects of power games and create healthier and more productive relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 5. Fourth technique, using emotions, emotional manipulation. The technique of using emotions is one of the powerful tools in dark psychology that is used deliberately and cleverly to control and manipulate the emotions of others. This technique can have deep and negative effects, especially in close relationships and work environments. In this chapter, we will examine the technique of using emotions, how to identify it, and ways to deal with this technique. The concept of using emotions. Using emotions means exploiting the feelings and emotions of others in order to achieve personal goals. A person using this technique may try to change the behavior or decisions of others by inducing specific emotions such as fear, guilt, or affection. This technique can include eliciting emotions, using emotional manipulation, and emotional deception. Types of techniques for using emotions. Emotion manipulation techniques can come in many forms, some of the most common of which include creating a feeling of guilt. A person who uses the technique of using emotions may force others to fulfill their requests by making them feel guilty. For example, a person may constantly tell you, "If I don't do this, you'll be responsible for it," to get you to do certain things. Stimulation of fear and anxiety. By using fear and anxiety as a tool, a person can put pressure on others and force them to make certain decisions. For example, a manager can induce his employee to do extra work by threatening to lose his job. Use of affection and sympathy. In some cases, a person may use affection and sympathy as a tool of manipulation. He may artificially show you a lot of affection and attention to impress you and achieve his goals. Methods of identifying the use of emotions. It can be difficult to identify the techniques of using emotions, but according to some signs and behavioral patterns, it is possible to identify them. Unusual changes in emotions. If you notice that your emotions are changing unusually and strongly, you may be affected by emotion manipulation techniques. Your emotions may be unnaturally stimulated and force you to make certain decisions. Creating emotional pressure. If you feel that you are under emotional pressure, such as guilt, fear, or anxiety, this pressure may have been applied on purpose. This emotional pressure can be designed to change your behavior or decisions. Inconsistency with real behavior. At times, a person who uses the technique of using emotions may show behaviors that do not correspond to his real feelings. This mismatch can be a sign of dishonest use of emotions. Coping ways using emotions. Coping with techniques of using emotions requires awareness, appropriate strategies, and the power to understand and manage emotions. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include: 1. Identify and understand your emotions. By recognizing and understanding your emotions better, you can avoid the effects of emotion manipulation techniques. Paying attention to changes in emotions and analyzing them can help you avoid emotional manipulation. 2. Maintaining emotional distance. By maintaining emotional distance and not depending on the emotional stimulation of others, you can avoid the negative effects of emotion manipulation techniques. Strengthening self-awareness and managing emotions can help you avoid emotional manipulation. 3. Questioning and analyzing the facts. By questioning and carefully analyzing the facts, you can avoid the effects of techniques of using emotions. Asking for clear and accurate information and logically examining the situation can help you avoid emotional manipulation. 4. Seek counseling and support. When you feel overwhelmed by emotional manipulation techniques, counseling with trusted people and getting support from professionals can help you gain a better understanding of the situation and ways to cope. Conclusion. The technique of using emotions, as one of the powerful tools in dark psychology, can have deep and negative effects on a person's relationships and decisions. By identifying this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can avoid the negative effects of using emotions and create healthier and more efficient relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 6, Fifth Technique: Exploitation of Vulnerabilities. The technique of exploiting weaknesses is one of the clever and harmful tools in dark psychology, which is used to control and manipulate others. This technique involves identifying and using individual weaknesses and vulnerabilities in order to achieve personal goals. In this chapter, we will examine this technique, how to identify it, and how to deal with it. The concept of exploiting weaknesses. Exploiting weaknesses means identifying and using the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of others in order to dominate them and control their behaviors and decisions. A person using this technique may deliberately seek out the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of others and then exploit these weaknesses to achieve their own goals. Types of exploitation of weaknesses. Exploitation techniques can come in many forms. Some of the most common include use of private information and vulnerabilities. A person who uses the technique of exploiting weaknesses may try to control and manipulate the behavior and decisions of others by using private information and personal vulnerabilities. For example, he may use information about your financial or family problems to get you to do certain things. Use of psychological weaknesses. In some cases, a person may take advantage of the psychological and emotional weaknesses of others. For example, he may use your feelings of distrust, fear, or lack of self-awareness to control your behavior and decisions. Deceiving and seducing. Using deception and seduction techniques in order to exploit individual weaknesses is also common. The person using this technique may intentionally provoke your feelings and needs in order to exploit these feelings to their advantage. Methods of identifying exploitation of weaknesses. Identifying techniques for exploiting weaknesses can be difficult, but according to some signs and behavioral patterns, they can be identified. Feeling pressured. If you feel that you are constantly being pressured or that your weaknesses are being exploited, you may be affected by vulnerability exploitation techniques. Changes in behavior and decisions. If you notice unusual changes in your behavior and decisions that are caused by the pressures and manipulations of others, these changes may be due to exploiting your weaknesses. Deception and emotional stimulation. If you feel that you are constantly being deceived or that your emotions are artificially stimulated, this could be a sign of the use of vulnerability exploitation techniques. Ways to deal with the exploitation of weaknesses. Dealing with exploit techniques requires awareness, appropriate strategies, and strength in managing weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include 1. Identify and understand your weaknesses. By recognizing and understanding your weaknesses and vulnerabilities, you can avoid the effects of exploiting techniques. Building on your strengths and working on your weaknesses can help you become less overwhelmed. 2. Privacy. By maintaining your privacy and preventing personal and sensitive information from being shared with others, you can prevent the effects of exploit techniques. Limiting the information you share with others can help protect your vulnerabilities. 3. Strengthen resistance skills. By strengthening resistance and emotional management skills, you can resist vulnerability exploitation techniques. Learning coping and manipulation techniques can help you avoid negative effect. 4. Seeking advice and support. When you feel that you have been affected by exploit techniques, consulting with experts and getting support from trusted people can help you gain a better understanding of the situation and how to deal with it. Conclusion. The technique of exploiting weaknesses, as one of the complex tools of dark psychology, can have deep and damaging effects on a person's psyche and behavior. By identifying this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can avoid the negative effects of exploiting weaknesses and maintain mental health and healthier relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 7. Sixth technique, dependency creation. Dependency technique is one of the powerful tools in dark psychology that is used to dominate and control others. This technique involves creating and strengthening emotional or practical dependencies in others in order to achieve one's goals. In this chapter, we will explore this technique, how to identify it, and ways to counter it. The concept of dependency. Creating dependency means designing and creating conditions in which a person becomes increasingly dependent on another. This dependence can be deliberately and cleverly designed to control a person's behaviors, decisions, and emotions. A person using this technique may drive the other person into extreme dependence by creating a need for support, attention, or emotional fulfillment. Types of dependency creation techniques. Dependency building techniques can come in many forms. Some of the most common include providing emotional needs. A person who uses the technique of creating dependence may try to create emotional dependence in others by providing emotional support, affection, and attention. This attention and affection can be provided artificially and controlled to the person so that he gradually becomes dependent on this support. Establishing financial dependence. In some cases, a person may try to establish financial and practical dependence by providing financial aid, resources, or facilities to another person in order to control him. This financial dependency can be deliberately designed to achieve specific goals. Creating dependence on decisions. A person who uses the technique of creating dependence may try to create dependence on his decisions in another person by providing specific information and advice. This dependency can be intentionally designed to control the person's behavior and decisions. Dependency identification methods. Recognizing addiction techniques can be challenging, but by looking at some signs and patterns of behavior, they can be identified. Feeling extremely dependent. If you find yourself increasingly dependent on a certain person and unable to make decisions or manage your emotions without them, you may be under the influence of codependency techniques. Changes in self-awareness and self-confidence. If you feel that you are deliberately reducing your self-awareness and self-confidence, and that you cannot achieve optimal performance without depending on another person, this can be a sign of using dependency techniques. Accepting unfair demands and conditions. If you find that you are constantly accepting unfair demands and conditions from the other person, and these conditions are constantly changing in favor of the other person, you may be under the influence of dependency building techniques. Ways to deal with dependency. Dealing with dependency creation techniques requires awareness, appropriate strategies, and self-awareness. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include: 1. Strengthen emotional and practical independence. By strengthening your emotional and practical independence, you can avoid the effects of dependency techniques. Learning techniques for managing emotions and making independent decisions can help you become less attached to artificial attachments. 2. Identify and assess your needs and dependencies. By identifying and assessing your needs and dependencies, you can avoid the effects of dependency-building techniques. Analyzing the facts and assessing the needs can help you gain a better understanding of your dependencies. 3. Maintain clear and strong boundaries. By maintaining clear and strong boundaries in your relationships and interactions, you can avoid the effects of codependency techniques. Setting boundaries and maintaining them can help you resist artificial attachments. 4. Seek counseling and support. When you feel that you are being influenced by codependency techniques, consulting with professionals and getting support from trusted people can help you gain a better understanding of the situation and ways to cope. Conclusion. The technique of creating dependency, as one of the complex tools of dark psychology, can have deep and damaging effects on a person's relationships and behavior. By identifying this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can avoid the negative effects of dependency and create healthier and more independent relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 8. The seventh technique, playing with self-esteem. The confidence game technique is one of the sophisticated tools in dark psychology that is used to control and manipulate others. This technique involves deliberately and calculatedly undermining or strengthening a person's self-confidence in order to direct him towards certain goals. In this chapter, we will examine this technique, how to identify it, and how to deal with it. The concept of playing with confidence. Playing with self-confidence means a deliberate and calculated change in a person's self-confidence level in order to control and influence his behavior and decisions. This technique can involve creating a feeling of self-deprecation or, conversely, an unrealistically high self-confidence. The person using this technique actively tries to influence the confidence of the other person in order to lead them towards their goals. A variety of confident game techniques. Confidence game techniques can come in many forms. Some of the most common include: undermining self-confidence. A person who uses the confidence game technique may try to undermine the other person's self-confidence by using criticism, disrespect, or humiliation. This weakening can be done gradually and continuously so that a person fully believes in his own inability and inadequacy. Unrealistic increase of self-confidence. At times, A person may artificially increase the self-confidence of another person by giving constant and unrealistic compliments. This unrealistic increase can lead a person towards decisions and behaviors that benefit the other person. Creating internal conflicts. A person who uses the technique of playing with self-confidence may cause internal conflicts in another person, causing him to weaken his self-confidence. These conflicts can be deliberately designed with the aim of weakening self-confidence and controlling a person's behavior. Methods of identifying the game with confidence. Identifying confidence game techniques can be challenging, but by looking at some signs and patterns of behavior, they can be identified. Changes in confidence level. If you notice unusual changes in your confidence level, such as a sudden drop or an unrealistic increase, you may be affected by confidence game techniques. Feelings of uncertainty and doubt. If you feel that you are constantly doubting and unsure about yourself and these feelings arise unusually, this can be a sign of using confidence game techniques. Unreal positive or negative effects. If you notice that the positive or negative effects on your confidence level are unrealistic and unnatural, this can be a sign of confidence game techniques. Ways to tackle the game with confidence. Dealing with confidence game techniques requires awareness, real confidence building, and effective strategies. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include: 1. Build real confidence. By focusing on building real confidence and knowing your strengths and weaknesses, you can avoid the effects of confidence game techniques. Working on self-awareness and developing personal skills can help you build your true self-confidence. 2. Logical and realistic analysis. By logically and realistically analyzing various situations and evaluating the information obtained, you can avoid the effects of confidence game techniques. Avoiding hasty decisions and carefully checking the facts can help you avoid negative effects. 3. Maintain clear and healthy boundaries. By maintaining clear and healthy boundaries in your relationships and interactions, you can avoid the effects of confidence game techniques. Setting clear boundaries and sticking to them can help you resist pressure and negative influences. 4. Seek advice and support. When you feel overwhelmed by confidence-playing techniques, consulting with professionals and getting support from trusted people can help you better understand the situation and how to deal with that hand. Find. Conclusion. The technique of playing with self-confidence, as one of the complex tools of dark psychology, can have deep and damaging effects on a person's psyche and behavior. By identifying this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can avoid the negative effects of the confidence game and start maintaining real confidence and healthier relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 9. Technique 8. Creating emotional dependencies. The technique of creating emotional dependencies is one of the complex and effective tools in dark psychology, which is used to dominate and control others. This technique involves creating strong emotional attachments in another person in order to achieve certain goals. In this chapter, we will examine this technique, how to identify it, and how to deal with it. The concept of creating emotional attachments. Creating emotional dependencies means designing and creating conditions in which a person becomes emotionally dependent on another. This dependency can include a need for affection, approval, or emotional support. A person who uses this technique, by using emotional and psychological tools, tries to create a deep emotional dependence in another person in order to bring him under his control and influence. Types of techniques for creating emotional dependencies. Emotional attachment techniques can come in many forms, some of the most common of which include stimulation of feelings and needs. A person who uses the technique of creating emotional dependencies may try to create a strong emotional dependency by stimulating the feelings and emotional needs of another person. This stimulation can include the provision of affection, attention, and support that is artificially and controlled. Establishing dependence on approval and affection. In some cases, a person may create emotional dependence in another person by providing constant approval and affection. These affirmations and affections can be deliberately designed so that the person becomes increasingly dependent on them. Creating a sense of need and emotional dependence. A person who uses this technique may strengthen emotional dependence by creating a situation where the other person feels that he cannot continue without his support and affection. This sense of need and dependence can be designed intentionally and with the purpose of controlling the behavior and decisions of the individual. Methods of identifying the creation of emotional dependencies. It can be difficult to identify the techniques of creating emotional dependencies, but according to some signs and behavioral patterns, it is possible to identify them. Feeling extremely emotionally dependent. If you find yourself becoming increasingly attached to a certain person and unable to feel emotionally comfortable without them, you may be under the influence of emotional attachment techniques. Feeling of emotional insecurity. If you feel that you are emotionally insecure without the approval and love of another person and these feelings are unnatural and unrealistic, this can be a sign of using techniques to create emotional dependencies. Unreal emotional effects. If you notice that your emotional effects are unrealistic and unnatural, this can be a sign of emotional attachment techniques. Ways to deal with creating emotional dependencies. Dealing with the techniques of creating emotional dependencies requires awareness, strengthening emotional independence, and effective strategies. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include: 1. Strengthen emotional independence. By strengthening emotional independence and working on strengthening self-awareness, you can avoid the effects of emotional attachment techniques. Learning emotion management techniques and building self-confidence can help you become less attached to artificial attachments. 2. Identifying and evaluating your emotions. By identifying and evaluating your emotions and logically analyzing emotional situations, you can avoid the effects of emotional attachment techniques. Examining facts and assessing emotions accurately can help you gain a better understanding of your addictions. 3. Maintaining healthy emotional boundaries. By maintaining healthy and clear emotional boundaries in your relationships and interactions, you can avoid the effects of attachment techniques. Setting clear emotional boundaries and sticking to them can help you resist artificial attachments. 4. Seeking counseling and support. When you feel that you are being affected by codependency techniques, consulting with professionals and getting support from trusted people can help you gain a better understanding of the situation and ways to deal with it. Conclusion. The technique of creating emotional dependencies, as one of the complex tools of dark psychology, can have deep and damaging effects on relationships and a person's psyche. By identifying this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can prevent the negative effects of creating emotional dependencies and maintain emotional independence and healthier relationships. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 10. Technique 9. Triggering negative emotions. The technique of stimulating negative emotions is one of the most important and complex tools in dark psychology, which is used to control and manipulate others. This technique involves creating and strengthening negative emotions in another person in order to achieve specific goals. In this chapter, we will examine this technique, how to identify it, and how to deal with it. The concept of stimulating negative emotions. Stimulation of negative emotions means designing and creating conditions in which a person intentionally and with a specific purpose experiences negative emotions such as anger, fear, anxiety, or jealousy. This technique can include creating stressful situations, inducing negative emotions, and using emotional stimuli to control a person's behavior. A person who uses this technique tries to influence the decisions and behavior of another person by creating and strengthening negative emotions. Types of techniques for stimulating negative emotions. Techniques for eliciting negative emotions can come in many forms, some of the most common of which include creating stress and pressure. A person who uses the technique of stimulating negative emotions may try to stimulate negative emotions of another person by creating stressful situations. These pressures can include work, family, or social pressures that are deliberately designed. Inducing fear and anxiety. In some cases, a person may cause fear and anxiety in another person by using false information or threats. This fear and worry can be deliberately designed with the aim of controlling the behavior and decisions of the individual. Creating jealousy and competition. A person who uses this technique may try to provoke negative feelings by creating situations that cause jealousy or competition in another person. This jealousy and competition can be intentionally designed with the aim of influencing a person's behavior. Methods of identifying the stimulation of negative emotions. It can be difficult to identify the techniques of stimulating negative emotions, but according to some signs and behavioral patterns, it is possible to identify them. Persistent and abnormal negative emotions. If you notice that you are constantly experiencing negative emotions such as anger, fear, or anxiety, and these feelings arise unnaturally and unexpectedly, you may be affected by negative emotion stimulation techniques. Sudden changes in emotional state. If you feel that you have suddenly experienced strong emotional changes without a clear reason, this can be a sign of using negative emotion stimulation techniques. Increased defensive or aggressive behaviors. If you notice that your defensive or aggressive behaviors have increased unnaturally, you may be under the influence of negative emotion stimulation techniques. Ways to deal with the stimulation of negative emotions. Dealing with negative emotion triggering techniques requires awareness, strengthening emotion management skills, and effective strategies. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include: 1. Strengthen emotion management skills. By strengthening emotion management skills and learning relaxation and concentration techniques, you can avoid the effects of negative emotion triggering techniques. Learning ways to cope with stress and anxiety can help you cope better with negative emotions. 2. Logical and realistic analysis. By logically and realistically analyzing various situations and evaluating the information obtained, you can avoid the effects of negative emotion stimulation techniques. Avoiding emotional reactions and examining the facts carefully can help you gain a better understanding of the situation. 3. Maintaining calmness and self-awareness. By maintaining calmness and self-awareness in the face of stressful and arousing situations, you can avoid the effects of negative emotion stimulation techniques. Focusing on calmness and proper management of emotions can help you cope better with negative situations. 4. Seeking counseling and support. When you feel that you are being affected by negative emotion stimulation techniques, consulting with professionals and getting support from trusted people can help you gain a better understanding of the situation and ways to cope. Conclusion. The technique of stimulating negative emotions, as one of the complex tools of dark psychology, can have deep and damaging effects on a person's psyche and behavior. By identifying this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can avoid the negative effects of triggering negative emotions and maintain a calmer and healthier mind. In future chapters, we'll explore other dark psychology techniques and delve deeper into the complex world of human behavior. Chapter 11. Technique 10. Information Control and Access Manipulation. The technique of information control and access is one of the most complex and effective tools of dark psychology, which is used to dominate the minds and decisions of others. This technique involves purposefully limiting or changing a person's access to information in order to influence their attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. In this chapter, we will examine this technique, how to identify it, and how to deal with it. The concept of information control and access. Information and access control means managing and regulating the flow of information that is provided to an individual or group. This technique can be implemented in a variety of ways, from limiting access to information sources to providing false or misleading information to the individual. A person who uses this technique tries to shape the mentality and decisions of a person by carefully controlling information and accessing it. Types of information and access control techniques. Information and access control techniques can come in many forms, some of the most common of which include limiting access to information. One of the common methods in this technique is to limit a person's access to information that can provide different points of view. This restriction can be physical, such as restricting access to books, media, or the internet, or through social settings, such as prohibiting contact with people who hold different views. Providing false or biased information. In some cases, a person may try to change the attitudes and beliefs of another person by providing false or biased information. This information may have been deliberately altered to give the individual a distorted picture of reality. Creating information noise. Another method in information control technique is creating information noise. This noise can include the presentation of a large volume of irrelevant or confusing information that makes it difficult for a person to correctly distinguish between real and important information. Identification methods of information control and access. Identifying information and access control techniques can be challenging, but given some signs and behavioral patterns, they can be identified. Feeling restricted in access to information. If you find that you consistently feel that your access to information sources is restricted, or that your information is unnaturally restricted or filtered, you may be affected by information and access control techniques. Contradictions and inconsistencies of information. If you see contradictions or unnatural inconsistencies in the information you receive, this can be a sign of the use of information control techniques, especially if these contrasts are deliberately designed to lead you to a certain point of view. Feeling confused and uncertain. If you are constantly feeling confused and uncertain about the facts and information you receive, you may be influenced by informational noise or the presentation of directional information. Ways to deal with information and access control. Coping with information and access control techniques requires awareness, critical thinking, and access to diverse and reliable information sources. Some effective ways to deal with this technique include: 1. Access to various information sources. By accessing various and reliable information sources, you can avoid the effects of information and access control techniques. Diversity in information sources helps you explore different perspectives and achieve a more comprehensive picture of reality. 2. Critical analysis of information. By critically analyzing information and evaluating it logically, you can avoid the effects of information and access control techniques. Critical thinking and checking the sources and authors of information can help you get the truth right. 3. Awareness of information biases. By being aware of possible biases in information and information sources, you can avoid the effects of information and access control techniques. Checking the background and objectives of the authors and sources of information can help you identify and avoid information biases. 4. Maintaining intellectual independence. By maintaining intellectual independence and self-awareness in the face of various information, you can avoid the effects of information and access control techniques. Trying to think independently and develop personal perspectives can help you be less influenced by biased information. 5. Refer to reliable and independent sources. Using reliable and independent sources of information published by neutral individuals or institutions without personal or organizational interests can help you avoid the effects of information and access control techniques. Conclusion. The technique of information control and access, as one of the complex tools of dark psychology, can have deep and hidden effects on a person's attitudes, beliefs, and decisions. By identifying this technique and using effective methods to deal with it, you can avoid the negative effects of information and access control and maintain intellectual independence and access to valid information. In the rest of this book, we will examine the effects of these techniques on human behavior and ways to counter them to prepare you to protect yourself against these tools of dark psychology. The final chapter, conclusion and purpose of the book, to achieve self-awareness and self-protection. This book examines 10 complex and powerful techniques of dark psychology. Each chapter of this book is written with the goal of providing detailed and practical information about various techniques that can be used to manipulate, control, and influence others. Now, at the end of this journey, it is time to come to a final conclusion and focus on the main purpose of this book, to raise awareness and protect ourselves against these techniques. The importance of being aware of dark psychology. Dark psychology is a set of tools and techniques that can have deep and hidden effects on the human mind and behavior. These techniques are especially effective in situations where a person is not aware of them and can greatly influence a person's decisions, feelings, and attitudes. By knowing these techniques, you will be able to 1. Early detection of dark psychology techniques. By understanding and identifying these techniques, you can identify them in time and prevent their effects on yourself and those around you. This awareness allows you to respond to different situations with thought and logic instead of emotional and ignorant reactions. 2. Strengthening coping abilities. By knowing the techniques of dark psychology, you can strengthen your coping abilities and protect yourself when facing people who use these techniques. This ability helps you maintain control in challenging situations and avoid making wrong decisions. 3. Prevention of psychological and emotional abuses. By knowing the techniques of dark psychology, you can protect yourself from psychological and emotional abuses. This awareness will allow you to avoid becoming a victim of these techniques and instead make better decisions that benefit you. Protecting yourself from dark psychology. To protect yourself from dark psychology techniques, it is necessary to employ effective strategies that enable you to act intelligently in the face of these techniques. Some of these strategies are: 1. Development of critical thinking. One of the most effective ways to deal with dark psychology is to develop and strengthen critical thinking. By carefully and logically analyzing information and situations, you can avoid the effects of dark psychology techniques. Questions like, who benefits from this situation? Is the information obtained valid? And could this information be directional? They can help you better analyze and evaluate the situation. 2. Strengthen communication skills. Strong communication skills will help you defend your rights and boundaries with confidence and authority when faced with people who use dark psychology techniques. Learning how to express your needs, feelings, and limitations clearly and assertively will help you avoid becoming a victim of these techniques. 3. Maintaining self-awareness and calmness. Maintaining self-awareness and calmness in the face of stressful and stimulating situations will help you make better decisions and avoid the effects of dark psychology. Exercises such as meditation, focusing on breathing, and relaxation techniques can help you stay calm and react rationally in challenging situations. 4. Educating and increasing knowledge. Educating and increasing knowledge about dark psychology and its techniques is one of the best ways to protect yourself. By reading reputable sources and being aware of new research in this area, you can increase your knowledge and protect yourself more effectively against these techniques. The ultimate goal: to use awareness to create positive change. The ultimate goal of this book is not only to provide information about dark psychology techniques and how to deal with them, but also to motivate you to use this awareness to make positive changes in your personal and social life. An awareness of dark psychology allows you to: 1. Build healthier and more effective relationships. By understanding dark psychology techniques and preventing their effects, you can build healthier relationships based on respect and trust. This awareness will help you set healthy boundaries in your relationships and prevent psychological and emotional abuse. 2. Make better decisions in life. Using the knowledge gained from this book, you can make better decisions in your life. These decisions can include career choices, personal and social relationships, and even everyday decisions that have profound effects on your life. 3. Help others protect themselves. By sharing your knowledge and awareness with others, you can help them protect themselves from dark psychology techniques. This can help create a society that is more aware and resistant to psychological and emotional abuse. 4. Make a positive impact in the community. Using this awareness, you can make a positive impact in your community. By educating others, promoting critical thinking, and advocating for those who may fall victim to dark psychology techniques, you can help create a healthier and more just society. Final conclusion. The book, Dark Psychology, is written with the aim of raising awareness and education about the complex techniques of dark psychology and ways to counter them. The ultimate goal of this book is to increase your awareness and help protect yourself against these techniques. By knowing and using the strategies presented in this book, you can lead your life towards independent thinking, better decisions, and healthier relationships. Being aware of dark psychology techniques will not only help you protect yourself, but also allow you to make a positive impact in your life and the lives of others. This book will provide you with the necessary tools to deal with psychological and emotional abuse and prepare you to make positive changes in your personal and social life. By applying this awareness, you can become a more resilient, aware, and effective person who not only protects yourself, but also helps create a better and more just world.